Hello, my name is Kevin Howard, and this is Breadcrumbs, a podcast for people who know it's not working. You have reached the YouTube cut for episode 24, where we talk about how extreme wealth has financialized Armageddon. Our story begins with the war in Iran. And what I'm going to talk about is the history of the relationship between the United States and Iran, what led us to this moment, and how this war is demonstrating that extreme wealth has decided that even nuclear war is profitable. Let's get into it. So, why attack Iran now? Within a day of the attack of Iran, all the military industrial stocks shot up. Raytheon went up 4.7% in a day, over almost $13 billion in shareholder value in one day, because they know what's coming. Northrop Grumman up 4.1%. Lockheed Martin up 3.4%. The American-Israeli war against Iran cost us $5 billion in the first week. Congress is already considering over $100 billion in immediate appropriations and in contemplating increasing the military budget by another $500 billion next year. So what is the profit-seeking profile of this wartime business model? Create the enemy. Destroy enemy territory. Plan reconstruction while you're destroying the territory. This allows the private capital to flow in and to maximize the profit on the back end in reconstruction. That is the profit-seeking pattern of this nightmare that President Eisenhower was talking about, the wartime business model. But the interesting thing about it is the wartime business model actually had iterations. So the first iteration, business model 1.0, was World War II. But in World War II, you had a real enemy. We didn't manufacture Germany. We didn't manufacture Japan. They were a real enemy. They really attacked us. So it was a legitimate war by historical standards. And at that time, war profiteering was illegal, was considered treason. So the business model had a real war, and the money to be made was deferred to the reconstruction, which is why we did the Marshall Plan, because that is where the money was made for American corporations. So that's wartime business model 1.0. Wartime business model 2.0 is what we had with the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, and the war in Ukraine. Because this is where we were allowed, because that's just how you do business under the military-industrial complex economy, is that war profiteering was no longer treason. So therefore, the profit margins are on the front end, paying counterinsurgencies to create the conflicts, supplying the weapons when the conflict finally arrives, supplying the military support for the conflict, no matter how long it's going to last, destroying as much of the infrastructure of the terrain where the conflict is occurring, so that you create the biggest reconstruction project possible at the end of the event, and then negotiate and have in place the public de-risking commitment to lay the foundation for private sector capital to come in and maximize their profits on reconstruction. Okay, that was the wartime business model 2.0. But where are we today? Well, this war in Iran, this time, is the wartime business model 3.0. And before I lay that out, I just want to explain how I got to the place where extreme wealth has figured out how to financialize Armageddon. They have figured out how to make nuclear war profitable. What is the evidence that they're itching for a nuclear war? We got a major clue when Kamala Harris lost the election to Donald Trump in 2024. Because during the lame duck session, as Joe Biden is going out of office, he did something extraordinary. He authorized the use of military personnel to enable Ukraine to launch long-term missiles deep into Russia to hit Moscow. Let us understand the significance of that. War has rules, and the thing about it is most countries actually follow them, and certainly Russia follows them. It is only America who doesn't, or our allies who doesn't feel like they have to follow the rules of war. But okay, there are rules of war. And what we are fighting in Ukraine is called a surrogate war. In other words, Ukraine is at war with Russia. Russia attacked Ukraine. Ukraine is defending itself in that attack. We've talked about why Russia attacked Ukraine. But the fact is that Russia and Ukraine are direct combatants in this war as a matter of international law. We are supporting Ukraine. And so we are not in direct war with Russia, even though we are providing Ukraine with the weapons to fight the war. It is okay. It is considered a surrogate war that NATO would provide over $300 billion in weapons and support to Ukraine to fight and kill Russian soldiers and Russian citizens in a war against Ukraine. And that NATO is not in direct war with Russia. It's a surrogate war. Ukraine is in direct war with Russia. And Russia accepts the fact that even though NATO is standing up Ukraine, and that is causing the deaths of many Russian soldiers, that NATO is not eligible for a direct Russian attack. But when President Biden authorized the use of U.S. military personnel and technology, satellite technology, to enable Ukraine to launch long-term missiles into Russia, into the territory of Russia, into their state capital, their national capital, Moscow. This crossed the line into a direct conflict. And Vladimir Putin expressly said, Russia knew that this was being contemplated. And they said expressly that this violates international law if U.S. personnel, U.S. military personnel, and U.S. technology, satellite technology, enables Ukraine to launch long-term missiles into Moscow, into the territory of Russia, killing Russian citizens. Russia is now at war with NATO directly. And that would authorize Russia to attack every one of our European partners. Joe Biden, President Biden, authorized an escalation, a direct attack using U.S. military personnel in the war in Ukraine. And it did happen. We did launch missiles and killed Russian citizens in Moscow. Russia has every legal right to attack NATO directly. But attacking NATO directly activates the nuclear option. If Russia starts destroying the capitals of Europe, yes, that will escalate into a likely nuclear war. And it was only Russian restraint that stopped them from doing it. Here, the Israelis are instigating these attacks. They are the aggressor here. They are leveraging and buying influence from us to do their dirty work. And when they start getting that beat down, they are going to do what? They're going to use their Samson option. If they think that Iran will defeat them, they will launch nuclear missiles. And they have between 80 and 400 nuclear warheads, right, in their Dimona nuclear facility. In fact, the historical reference that shows you that the Israelis are prepared to use nuclear weapons if their national security is at stake occurred in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, because there was a phase of that war where they were getting overrun. And the government at the time ordered the preparation for the use of nuclear weapons. So they're prepared to do it. The Samson option is real. And as the Golden Dome hyper expensive anti-air missile system gets exhausted in the first wave, because Iran showed the methodology. You load up the first wave with your cheapest high volume missiles that exhaust the anti-air system. Every one of those anti-air missiles are expensive that Israel is using for their Golden Dome. And what happens is, after a few weeks, they run out of missiles. So Iran, the first wave, and that's what we're going through. It started off 99% shoot down rate. The Israelis are shooting it down, the Americans are shooting it down. We're down to 90% shoot down rate, which means now 10% of the missiles are actually getting through. What you do is you go from your cheapest missiles, maximum volume, you overwhelm the system. That 90% is going to rapidly decline because they're running out of the number of missiles. And then with the second and third phase, Iran will improve with their best hypersonic missiles, highly accurate. They're getting the grid coordinates, the satellite support, the same satellite support we gave to the Ukrainians against the Russians. So as the Israeli anti-air missiles run out and the Golden Dome comes down and now they can't defend themselves, Iran is going to pummel Israel. And you could be rest assured they are going to launch, because this is what people have been itching for. They're going to launch a nuclear attack against Iran. So what then? Because Israel launches a nuclear attack and destroys Tehran. Now, Iran has set up a decentralized response system. So it's interesting. I still don't think a nuclear bomb destroying Tehran will cause Iran to simply surrender. I don't see that, but it will do catastrophic damage. And the question then will be, what does the world do? Because let's be clear. If Israel launches a nuclear missile against Iran with the support and the technical support of the United States, this is not Israel defending itself. Israel is the aggressor in the attack against Iran, and Iran is defending itself. The implications to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty are too devastating to contemplate, but I'm going to lay them right out here, right now. Russia has no choice but to respond by launching a nuclear attack against Israel. Russia does not want to launch a nuclear attack against anyone. Russia, just like Iran, has used maximum restraint despite our provocations. But if the United States authorizes its ally in an act of aggression to launch a nuclear attack against a country that the United States doesn't like, and Russia does nothing, and I mean does not respond with a nuclear attack against Israel, if Russia doesn't respond, Russia loses the strategic deterrence. It would establish the most dangerous president this world has ever seen. And that would mean that American allies, it's okay for them to use a nuclear bomb in an act of aggression, and there is no consequence. America will become nuclear dominant. And Russia knows it. And there's no way they're going to accept that, because that is the worst threat to their national security if they concede nuclear deterrence to the United States. If you found this YouTube cut to be valuable, subscribe to the Patreon Breadcrumbs family on the link below this final cut. You will get access to the full episode, 90 minutes, where I lay out the whole historical context. I show you all the references, 90 plus references that support everything that I'm saying. This is serious. Extreme wealth has finally completely lost their mind, and they financialize Armageddon, and they're setting it up to happen. We can do something about it. Join me. Subscribe to the Breadcrumbs community on Patreon at the link below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you the next time in the conversation.